As of 2016, Nick had gone to rehab 18 times, and that means that in 7 years, he went to rehab 18.
By 2016, Nick had entered rehabilitation 18 times, 18 attempts over the span of 7 years. It was a record not meant to impress, but to illuminate the weight he carried, the invisible fractures that had been accumulating long before the public became aware. Within Rob Reiner's inner circle, conversations began to surface about the pressures that had driven his son to the brink. Yet, to grasp the full measure of that strain, one must first understand the crucible in which Robert Niro was forged, a man whose intensity would define a generation of Hollywood cinema. Robert Anthony Niro was born on August 17, 1943, in Manhattan. In his home, art was not a pursuit. It was the air itself, breathed with expectation and rigor. His parents, Virginia Admiral and Robert Niro Sr., were not casual creators, they were disciplined, relentless painters entrenched in New York's unforgiving art world. From the very beginning, Niro's life was saturated with expectation, obsession, and emotional weight. Even after their separation, the home's rigor did not soften. The environment remained sharp, demanding, and relentlessly exacting, a world where every gesture, every silence, every unspoken tension carried significance. In that space, young Niro learned to see beyond performance, beyond words. He observed struggle as lived experience, sacrifice as inevitability. He learned to read the quiet cracks in human behavior, the hesitation, the glance, the unspoken defiance, before ever stepping in front of a camera. Growing up in Manhattan's Little Italy only honed that sensibility. The streets themselves were teachers, their rhythm uncompromising, their conversations coded, their cautionary glances instructive. He absorbed the language of realism, the body's instinctive truth, and it became inseparable from his own vision. Years later, that instinct would ignite on screen with a force that was both riveting and unsettling. By the time he reached his teenage years, acting was no longer an interest, it was survival. It demanded immersion, discipline, and a surrender of self. He sought the most exacting training New York could offer, not fame, not recognition, but truth. Under Stella Adler, he was taught to excavate the emotional core of a character, to understand the very rhythm of thought and breath. Every pause, every tremor, every eruption was interrogated for authenticity. Then, with Lee Strasberg at the actor's studio, he confronted method acting in its purest form, total, uncompromising, and psychologically exacting. Here, performance was no longer a craft. It was a lived experience, a rehearsal of life itself. The actor's studio was no sanctuary. It was full-contact mental work, a rigorous excavation of self, where every instinct, fear, and impulse was tested. These were the years that forged what would later become the Niro formula, an approach that would unsettle and command respect in equal measure. Total immersion, meticulous preparation, no shortcuts. Even in his earliest film roles of the late 1960s and early 1970s, the signs were evident. There was a simmering intensity, a latent volatility that seemed to pulse beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Hollywood took notice in 1973, when Niro joined Martin Scorsese on Mean Streets. The film was intimate, raw, almost dangerously real. Niro's performance was not acted in the conventional sense. It was alive, unstable, unpredictable, an unfiltered translation of observation into motion. The following year, he appeared in The Godfather Part 2 as a young Vito Corleone, a role fraught with expectation and risk. He spoke little English on screen, relying instead on posture, silence, and the subtlest micro-expression. The result was precise, surgical, and unrelenting. It earned him his first Academy Award, and more than that, it confirmed a truth that would define his career: his talent was inseparable from his fearlessness. What set Niro apart was his uncompromising commitment to authenticity. For Taxi Driver, he did not observe from a distance. He secured a real taxi license and drove the streets of New York for months, allowing the loneliness, the anger, the quiet instability of the city to seep into him. The iconic, "You talkin' to me" moment was not a line memorized. It was instinct, an articulation of lived tension. By the time Raging Bull arrived, his method had reached almost mythic proportions. He trained as a professional boxer, transforming his body to reflect the physical and psychological collapse of his character. The change was brutal, visible, and unflinching. It earned him a second Academy Award and cemented a reputation built on a willingness to endure discomfort in pursuit of truth. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Niro's career became a compendium of classics: The King of Comedy, Once Upon a Time in America, Brazil, Goodfellas, Cape Fear, Casino. Each role peeled back another layer, exposing new facets of control, menace, and human complexity. In Goodfellas, his Jimmy Conway was quiet, deliberate, and patient, an embodiment of danger without theatrics. That restraint made him profoundly unsettling, a study in measured power. Yet, in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Niro took an unexpected turn. He moved into comedy, demonstrating that intensity was not confinement, it was fuel. Films like Analyze This, Meet the Parents, and the in turn upended audience expectations. Humor, timing, and self-awareness became extensions of the same discipline that had once driven violence and menace on screen. Every choice reflected confidence, mastery, and a willingness to confront his own legend without compromise. As the decades progressed, Niro's presence on screen evolved. Where once audiences had been captivated by silence and menace, they now encountered timing, self-awareness, and a sharp, almost disarming humor. It was a quiet revelation. Only someone with absolute authority over themselves and their craft could engage so fully with their own legend, to bend it, examine it, and even mock it, without ever undermining the force of their presence. These choices were never casual, never incidental. They were deliberate, calculated risks, movements only possible for someone whose record, whose mastery, had become untouchable. Niro understood exactly who he was in the lens of the camera, and he never hesitated to inhabit, challenge, or subvert that identity. Off-screen, his influence extended far beyond performance. He became a figure of substantial cultural weight, producer, director, visionary. In the aftermath of the September 11th attacks, he co-founded the Tribeca Film Festival, a tangible effort to restore life and opportunity to Lower Manhattan. This was not image-making or strategic branding. It was an act of commitment, an extension of the same discipline that had defined his work on screen. Tribeca became both lifeline and platform, a space where independent filmmakers could risk, experiment, and tell difficult stories. As a director, Niro remained resolutely grounded. A Bronx Tale in 1993 was a study in restraint and authenticity. Drawn from his own childhood, it explored loyalty, temptation, and the quiet, defining choices that shape human lives. Spectacle was never the goal. Truth was. Even as time pressed on, he refused to recede, returning to the screen with performances in Silver Linings Playbook, The Irishman, and Killers of the Flower Moon that confronted aging, regret, and history with unflinching clarity. In The Irishman, the familiar terrain of crime and power became a meditation on consequence. The swagger was gone, reflection remained. The moral debts of a life lived in extremes were laid bare, silent yet unmissable. Outside of the frame, his personal life unfolded in chapters as complex as his films. Each phase revealed reinvention, responsibility, and enduring loyalty. In 1976, he married actress and singer Diani Abbott, stepping into family life even as his professional pressures intensified. They had a son, Rafael Niro, who would eventually choose a path outside of Hollywood, while remaining loosely tethered to its orbit. Family, for Niro, was never only blood, it was commitment, presence, and consistency. When he adopted Abbott's daughter, Drana, it was a permanent choice, unburdened by symbolism. She would later pursue acting, modeling, and filmmaking, always citing Niro as a stabilizing, protective force. Even after his marriage to Abbott ended in 1988, that presence never wavered. He remained engaged, attentive, responsible, a reminder that care does not dissolve with legal separation. In the mid-1990s, a new chapter began through his relationship with actress and model Tookie Smith. By 1995, the family expanded again with the birth of twin sons, Julian and Aaron, born through surrogacy. Here, too, he navigated fatherhood with quiet determination, preserving their lives and privacy despite the glare of global attention. The arrival of the twins marked a new chapter in Niro's life as a father, one he guarded with deliberate care. Despite the relentless scrutiny of global fame, he shielded their world with a quiet rigor, preserving normalcy, privacy, and stability. In 1997, he entered another chapter of partnership, marrying Grace Hightower, a philanthropist and former flight attendant. Their relationship was anchored in shared values, a measured ambition, and an unwavering focus on family. A year later, in 1998, they welcomed a son, Elliot, and Niro would later speak openly about Elliot's autism, using his visibility not for acclaim, but to foster understanding and compassion, to create space for empathy in a world that often overlooked difference. Though Niro and Hightower separated later that year, their story was far from over. In 2004, in a decision as rare as it was revealing, they reconciled and renewed their vows. It was a testament to Niro's belief in second chances, in endurance, in the painstaking work of rebuilding after fracture. Their family grew again in 2011, with the birth of Helen Grace via surrogacy. To become a father once more in his late 60s did not slow him, it refined him. He approached each role, on screen or in life, with the same seriousness, the same attentiveness that had defined decades of work and devotion. Fatherhood reshaped him, he said. It demanded perspective, patience, humility. It offered purpose beyond accolades, beyond critical acclaim, beyond the reach of the camera. These chapters collectively sketch a portrait of a man whose private life carried complexity and depth as profound as his public persona. Through marriages, separations, reconciliations, and decades of parenting, Niro demonstrated that family, however unconventional, however layered, remained central to his identity. Then came the silence that rippled across Hollywood, a quiet tremor before the shock of discovery at Rob Reiner's Brentwood home. The reverberations extended far beyond Los Angeles, leaving friends, collaborators, and those who had long admired the man struggling to reconcile the gentleman they knew with the reality emerging in whispers and reports. Among those most affected was Robert Niro, a close friend of the Reiners for decades. When he spoke, it was with a rare candor, his voice measured, heavy with restraint. This wasn't something that came out of nowhere, he said softly. People often search for a single moment, a single spark. That's not how these things unfold. They build, they fracture, they erode. On December 14, 2025, the accumulated weight of years of tension reached its tipping point, shattering a family and leaving the industry reeling. For those who had glimpsed the simmering strain, nothing felt sudden. When Roy Reiner arrived at the Brentwood home after being alerted that her parents had missed a routine appointment, she expected confusion, perhaps delay, not catastrophe. What she found would mark her forever. She fled in shock, confronted by the immediate, undeniable consequences of years of unresolved pressure and pain. In that instant, she became an unwilling witness to a fracture that had been silently growing, invisible until it could no longer be contained. Niro would later reflect on the weight of such moments, speaking with quiet, deliberate sorrow. That is something no child should ever have to see, he said. It lingers. It becomes part of you, whether you want it to or not. The observation was restrained, yet it carried the full, undeniable gravity of a life and a family caught between legacy, love, and unspoken struggle. That image does not fade. It becomes a part of you, lodged in memory, in ways you cannot undo or dismiss. As investigators began to trace the days, the weeks, the months leading up to the event, attention inevitably turned to Nick Reiner, who had been living with his parents. Friends would later recall his growing volatility, an unrest that seemed to deepen in the months preceding the incident. Niro spoke cautiously, refusing to excuse what followed, yet he addressed what he saw as years of neglect and unacknowledged suffering. There was pain there, he said, his voice measured, low, deep pain. And when pain is dismissed, when it is minimized, it does not disappear. It turns inward, or it turns outward. One moment, seemingly minor at the time, would later linger in the memory of all who witnessed it, a Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien, the night before the family's world fractured. Nick appeared agitated, unsettled, tense, a presence that could not be ignored. When Rob Reiner confronted him, the exchange drew quiet attention across the room. Niro watched as concern grew into apprehension. That moment, small and fleeting on the surface, carried the weight of years. It was not merely a father correcting a son. It was the surface rupture of frustration, of pressure long contained, finally breaking free. Niro spoke plainly. That moment was not discipline. It was years of bottled frustration spilling into the open. Once pressure reaches the surface, there is no returning it to silence. After Roy contacted authorities, her next call revealed the depth of connection and care within the Reiner inner circle. Billy Crystal's immediate response, rushing to the house with his wife without hesitation, spoke louder than words ever could. Respect, yes, but something deeper, love. Niro described it as pure heartbreak. We all felt like we failed him somehow, he admitted quietly. You look back and ask yourself, what did we miss? What signs did we explain away? And why? The questions hung in the air, unanswered, heavier than the explanations any of them could offer. Nick's arrest later that day marked the legal beginning of what had been building emotionally for years. Yet Nairo's reflection avoided spectacle. He would not allow the narrative to be reduced to Hollywood drama. "This isn't about fame or celebrity," he said softly. "It's about a family, about mental health, about what happens when love and fear occupy the same space for too long." In the days that followed, Niro spoke of the need for compassion without denial, understanding without excuse. He reminded those around him, and, by extension, all who would listen, that grief and accountability can coexist. "You can grieve and still ask how it reached this point," he said. "If we do not ask, we are merely waiting for the next time it happens." For Niro, losing Rob Reiner was not only losing a friend, it was an acute confrontation with the fragility beneath human connection. Lives built on laughter, on achievement, on shared history, can nonetheless carry strain so profound it becomes invisible until the moment it erupts. "We tell ourselves strong people will ask for help," he said softly. "Sometimes they do not. Sometimes, by the time they do, the damage is already done." It is a truth both quiet and unbearable, lingering long after the facts have been recorded. A reminder that what we choose not to see, what we fail to acknowledge, can carry the heaviest cost of all.